All right, what's up, y'all? It's Woolie here. So, look, I want to have a discussion about omnibus and stack clamp. All right. So, here's the thing. There's a lot of discussion about this. There's always a discussion about this anytime we start talking about the state of the game. So, like the last video I did, there was a couple of comments that kind of mentioned stack clamp. So, here's the thing. I want to talk about that because, look, I feel like we're the meme of like Blizzard, and people are asking for like old WoW, and I'm standing up there on the stage and I'm saying like, you think that's what you want, but it's not really what you want. Let me explain. Okay, so 3 years ago, 4 years ago, so we got Save the Universe almost 2 years ago, right? And that is when we got Omnibus, and that's when we got things like the Stat Clan. Okay, now prior to the stack clamp, because look, let me start by saying I understand where you're coming from if you don't like the stack clamp. I get it, understandable, because prior to the stack clamp, you know what I mean, we can go into the on duty. We didn't have omnibus, we didn't have this clean UI, none of that. So you would just go into on duty, you would go into queuing up for the raids, and you would just pick something, right? You couldn't get into any of this stuff because nobody was running it. Nobody was running this shit, man. Nobody would get in here and do this stuff. You know what I mean? And so trying to go back and get these feats, you know what I mean? Where you would go back and you would go through some of these episodes and we'd try to get some of these feats. Nobody was doing that. Nobody was doing it. So you can say what you want. You can feel however you feel about it. Whether you like omnibus, you like the stat clamp, because there's no in between. You either love it or you hate it. That's kind of how people talk about it. I've never seen anybody who's like, I don't care, one way or the other. Everybody's either like, I like it or I absolutely hate it. So you just couldn't get into this stuff, 3 or 4 years ago. Because look, I've played this game for a decade and it's been off and on, but over the last, let's say, 5 years, 4 years, I've been pretty consistent where I've played 90% of the year with, not really taking a lot of time off. The only time I took off of this game in the last 4 years was when Elden Ring came out, and then when I just went back to Destiny for like 2 months. You know what I mean? So all in all, like I took about 4 or 5 months off of the game, and not at one time. It's been broken up. So look, I've been here for all of that. Okay, so I definitely remember what DC was like prior to Artifacts. Let's say the launch of when it went on to Xbox in like 2016, I believe. I was there. I was there for the launch of Xbox, and I had already been playing on PlayStation, since like 2012, I believe, is when I got into DC. Okay, so I was there through everything, through advanced mechanics, everything, through the introduction of weapon mastery. I've been here for everything that DC had. So back in the launch of, when it came to Xbox in 2016, this was still pre-artifact days, guys, and I remember they tried to do a stat clamp at that time, um, and it was weird because skill points were still a big thing, but then when they did that update, it didn't matter how many skill points you had. So let's say you could have like 300 skill points, and with the update that they did, somebody could come in with like 50 skill points, and you have 300 skill points, and it wouldn't matter because they had a higher combat rating than you. So everything went based off of your combat rating, and that was kind of a frustrating time in DC. It's much worse than it is now. So you really didn't have to earn anything or work for anything. You just kind of got the highest combat rating. And then we got artifacts after they like backtracked on that and they updated it to where skill points would matter again. Because I remember I left Xbox and I came back to PlayStation, And shortly after that, we got the update where it went back to your skill points mattered more than your combat rating. And then I left. And then shortly after that, artifacts came into the picture. Okay? So, this is what I'm saying. I want to hear what you guys have to say about the stat clamp. Because one of the things that somebody mentioned was it could have been done differently. And to that, I say, how? How could it have been done differently is what I want to know. Because I think they did a fairly good job, given the constraints that they had to work within. Because I remember what DC was like in the past, and I remember what DC was like through all of the changes that they made with advanced mechanics, with weapon mastery. I remember what DC was like prior to artifacts, and I remember what DC was like when skill points didn't matter and combat rating was the only thing that mattered. And so I've been through all of that, and I think Omnibus is fairly balanced as well as it could be, because it's not fun when you just simply breeze through these old raids. Like, I want to go back and play them and actually enjoy them, and I feel like I can for the most part when they actually, when they actually pop up and we can get into them. And so what exactly could be done different is what I want to know. Like, what would you guys really like to see? Because you never know. Maybe somebody will come across this. Maybe a dev will ever come across this and take some feedback. It's like 99% doubtful that's ever going to happen, but it's still nice to have that conversation. Let us get engaged with that. You know what I mean? Because personally, like I said, me being somebody that's been through the different stages of DC Universe Online, I've been here through all the phases um, that have taken place in the life cycle of this game. And so I remember what DC was like prior to the state that it's in now. I remember what DC was like before artifacts, when 100 skill points was a big thing. Like, you guys don't understand how easy you have it today. DC was hard back in the day. It was not a casual game by any means. Aside from the game just not telling you a damn thing, you know what I mean? You didn't have the cutscenes that gave you those tips. Those are things that we complained about. Is that the game was not player friendly because it told you absolutely nothing about any of the roles. It told you absolutely nothing at all. You just kind of had to wing it. This is why when I first got onto the game, I played the game for like a month before I knew what I was doing. And I was playing controller, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to watch a lot of videos and read a lot of guides to understand what a controller is and how to play a controller. So yeah, you guys don't know how good you have it today. Like, I played this game for like 4 months before I knew I could zoom my camera out back in the day. So that's why that was one of the things I highlighted when I started making videos. But yeah, DC is a whole different beast from what it was when it came out. It's far more polished than it used to be. I'll say that. So I think as far as like the stat clamp, it's become pretty balanced. But like I said, some people said it could have been handled different. So how? Explain that, elaborate on that, please, because I don't think it could. I think they've done the best that they could, and I want to know how could they have handled Stat Clamp different? Because, like I said, 3 years ago, nobody was running anything but the latest raids, and you can see that in LSG. All anybody ever wants to do is TTE, TTR. Nobody wants to run anything else. They want to run the latest raids, and that's contributing. That's a contributing factor right now to the decline of DC because nobody's wanting to go back and run these old raids for fun. Everybody's worried about being in game. That in game don't mean shit. That CR that you got don't mean shit. You know what I mean? Like, look, I'm rocking full elite gear. You know what I mean? It don't mean nothing because I can't get into anything. Nobody's running anything but TTE. I've done a few raids tonight, but it don't matter. Like I said, because then again we're stack clamped, and that is kind of frustrating. But at the same time, nobody was doing this stuff 3 years ago without the stack clamp, without omnibus. You could not get into any of these old raids. Just trying to play casually and have fun. You could not do it. But anyways, guys, so that's it. That's the discussion that we want to have tonight for this weekend. We just want to talk about omnibus. We want to talk about the stack clamp. We want to know what your feelings are. Okay, so that's what I got for you tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and jump back into some raids. I'm gonna try to. I'll catch you next time. Woolie out. Stay frosty.